The alien nurse held me close. Her tears stirred more than my fear. The awakening, the ground had betrayed him. That was Elliot Tanner's last coherent thought before the mountainside gave way beneath his boots. One moment he was taking soil samples for the Theros colony terraforming project. The next, the world became a violent blur of rock and dirt and sky. Pain came first, then darkness. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments. A ceiling of unfamiliar metal, the soft hum of medical equipment, the strange sweet scent of something like lavender, but with metallic undertones. And most distinctly, a gentle pressure against his hand, someone holding it. The patient shows increased neural activity, a melodic voice said. He's waking. Elliot turned his head with effort. Through blurred vision, he made out a slender figure with skin the color of twilight, a soft, luminous purple that seemed to pulse slightly with an inner light. As his focus sharpened, he saw her clearly. High cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes of deep indigo, and across her face, delicate patterns that reminded him of star charts. A Celestin. He'd heard stories about the empathic beings from Aurelia Prime, but he'd never seen one in person. "Don't move," she said, noticing his attempt to sit up. "Your spinal reconstruction is still integrating. How bad?" Elliot's voice emerged as a rasp. "You fell 70 meters down a rock slide. Your terraforming suit absorbed some impact, but we counted 27 fractures, internal hemorrhaging, and severe nerve damage." She adjusted something on the medical console. "I'm Lyria, your assigned healer, Elliot Tanner. Terraforming specialist." He winced as pain flared through his chest. "Apparently not a very good one." A small smile touched her lips. "The mountain wasn't ready to be reshaped. Sometimes planets resist change." Elliot noticed how her eyes seemed to shimmer, almost as if liquid starlight swirled within them. When she leaned closer to check his vitals, he saw that what he'd initially taken for tattoos were actually subtle markings that glowed faintly beneath her skin. "The colony director was here earlier," Lyria said. "The landslide destroyed 3 drilling stations. You're the only survivor of your team. The news hit harder than the mountain had. Jensen, Camara, Rodriguez, all gone." Guilt and grief crashed through him with such intensity that the monitors around his bed began to wail. Lyria's hand moved quickly to his forehead. "Please try to remain calm. Your neural pathways are still healing. I can't," Elliot gasped, drowning in remorse. Something unexpected happened then. A single tear formed in Lyria's indigo eye. As it traced down her purple cheek, it left a glowing trail, as if someone had drawn a line of phosphorescence across her skin. When the tear fell onto his arm, Elliot felt a strange warmth spread through him, then a gentle mental pressure, like someone was carefully lifting some of his grief away. "What did you just—" "A temporary empathic buffer," Lyria explained softly. "My people can share emotional burdens. Rest now. Tomorrow will be difficult enough." As darkness reclaimed him, Elliot's last thought was of the strange, beautiful alien whose tear had somehow touched more than just his skin. Empathic connection. The next 3 days passed in a haze of pain and medication for Elliot. Colony medics came and went, their faces blurring together as they discussed his prognosis in hushed, concerned tones. Only Lyria remained constant, her purple form moving gracefully around his medical pod, adjusting treatments and monitoring his deteriorating condition. On the 4th day, Elliot woke to raised voices outside his room. "The nerve damage is spreading." "His body is rejecting the synthetic repairs," said a gruff male voice. "Dr. Harlow, the colony's chief physician." "I've seen this before," Lyria's melodic voice replied. "His autonomic system is trapped in a feedback loop of trauma. Standard treatments won't work. What do you suggest then?" "We've tried everything in our protocol." A pause. "I could attempt a deep empathic intervention." "Absolutely not," Harlow snapped. "That's not approved for human patients. The psychic strain could kill you both." "With respect, Doctor, he will die without it." When they entered his room, Elliot pretended to be asleep, but he felt Lyria's gaze. She knew he'd been listening. Later that night, when the medical bay was quiet, Lyria returned alone. She sat beside his bed and took his hand between hers. "You heard," she said simply. Elliot nodded weakly. "What's this intervention?" Lyria's indigo eyes studied him intently. My people can form temporary neural bridges through emotional resonance. I would use my tears as a conduit to your nervous system, guiding it back to proper function. Your tears can heal. Not directly. They carry empathic proteins that can synchronize with other beings' emotional centers. She hesitated. But there are risks. The connection goes both ways. I will feel your pain, your memories, and you will experience mine. Elliot considered this as another wave of pain crashed through him. The monitors flickered ominously. Why would you risk yourself for me? He whispered. Lyria's luminous patterns pulsed slightly brighter. Because healing is sacred to my people. Because your life has value. Her voice softened. Because I've felt your kindness even through your pain. Decision made. Elliot squeezed her hand. Do it! Lyria dimmed the lights and disconnected the alarm on his monitors. She placed her hands gently on either side of his face, her touch cool against his fevered skin. Look at me, she instructed. Don't look away, no matter what happens. As their eyes locked, Lyria began to sing in a language Elliot didn't recognize, a melody that seemed to vibrate at the cellular level. The markings across her purple skin brightened, and her indigo eyes welled with luminescent tears. The first tear fell onto his chest, directly above his heart, and Elliot gasped. It wasn't wet like a human tear. It felt like liquid electricity seeping through his skin. The second tear fell on his forehead, and suddenly the boundaries between them began to blur. He was in two bodies at once, his broken one and her whole one. He felt her determination, her compassion, and beneath it, a deep well of loneliness that mirrored his own. Their heartbeats synchronized as more tears fell, each one forming another strand in the web connecting them. Then came the memories, hers and his, tangled together. Elliot felt himself falling into her consciousness as she carefully guided his fragmented nervous system back into harmony. Her essence wrapped around his pain, not removing it but reshaping it, teaching his body how to heal. When the last tear fell, a blinding light filled the room. Elliot heard Lyria cry out as she absorbed the worst of his trauma. Then everything went quiet. He woke hours later feeling strangely whole. Lyria lay slumped in the chair beside him, her purple skin paler, the luminous patterns dimmed, but she was smiling faintly in her exhausted sleep. For the first time since the accident, Elliot felt no pain, only the lingering echo of someone else's memories nestled alongside his own. Shared memories. Elliot sat on the edge of his bed, testing his newly healed limbs with cautious movements. A week had passed since Lyria's intervention, and his recovery had progressed at a rate that left the colony doctors baffled and suspicious. They've been questioning me for hours, Lyria said as she entered his room, closing the door behind her. Dr. Harlow knows we did something unauthorized. Are you in trouble? Elliot asked, concerned by the fatigue evident in her posture. She shook her head, her purple skin catching the light as she moved. Not exactly. They're more fascinated than angry. They want to understand how you healed so quickly. She sat beside him, leaving a careful distance between them. How much do you remember? Everything, he admitted. Your memories alongside mine. Is that normal? No, her indigo eyes studied him. The connection is usually one way. The healer accesses the patient's system, not the reverse. She hesitated, especially not with such clarity. Since the intervention, fragments of Lyria's past had been surfacing in Elliot's dreams, vivid scenes from a life not his own. A crystalline city on Aurelia Prime, the rigorous training of Kalistan healers, and most prominently a man named Soren with kind eyes and an explorer's heart. I've seen him, Elliot said quietly. Soren. Lyria went very still, the patterns on her skin dimming slightly. What did you see? You were assigned to his expedition ship. He was charting the Veil Nebula when something went wrong. Elliot closed his eyes, accessing the borrowed memory. A radiation storm. He was exposed trying to save another crew member. I couldn't heal him, Lyria whispered. I tried for days, but the radiation had changed his cellular structure too much. He died in my arms, her voice caught. That was 200 years ago. Elliot's eyes widened. 200? How old are you? My species lives approximately 800 of your years, she explained. Soren was my first human patient. After he died, I spent decades studying human physiology, determined never to fail that way again. Her gaze met his. That's why I was assigned to the Theros colony. I'm considered something of an expert on humans now. The irony wasn't lost on Elliot. And yet I'm the one who's seen inside your memories. Yes, she acknowledged. And I've seen yours. Your guilt about coming to Theros, running from Earth and the family that no longer needed you. Elliot flinched at the accuracy. After his divorce, with his children grown and moved away, he'd volunteered for the most distant, dangerous terraforming project available. Not just for the challenge, but for the escape. You've been lonely a very long time, Lyria observed. Even before you left Earth. 200 years is longer, he replied. A small smile touched her lips. Loneliness isn't measured in years, but in heartbeats. Something unspoken passed between them. Recognition of a shared emptiness that somehow felt less empty when acknowledged by another. Elliot reached out hesitantly, his finger stopping just short of her hand. The connection between us, is it permanent? It will fade, she said, but didn't sound entirely convinced. Empathic bonds aren't meant to last between different species. Yet when her fingers finally bridged the gap to touch his, they both felt it. The unmistakable resonance of two systems still attuned to each other. Like instruments that, once played together, could never again produce quite the same sound alone. What happens now? Elliot asked. Lyria's indigo eyes held his. I don't know. This is uncharted territory. The luminous patterns across her purple skin brightened slightly. But perhaps that's appropriate for a terraformer and an explorer. Outside his window, the alien landscape of Theros stretched toward a horizon neither of them had expected to cross together. "In blooming intimacy, you've been discharged," Lyria announced, entering Elliot's room with a data tablet. "Dr. Harlow says there's no medical reason to keep you here any longer." 2 weeks had passed since the empathic healing, and Elliot had regained full mobility. He stood by the window, watching the alien sunset paint Theros' sky in shades of amber and crimson. "Where will I go?" he asked. "My quarters were reassigned when they thought I wouldn't survive." Lyria's luminous patterns pulsed slightly. "I've arranged temporary housing for you in the diplomatic sector. It's where visiting species stay, where I stay." The implications hung in the air between them. Since their empathic connection, they'd been cautiously circling each other, aware that something profound had changed but uncertain how to navigate it. "I'd like that," Elliot said simply. Later that evening, in Lyria's quarters, Elliot marveled at how she'd transformed the sterile colony apartment. Bioluminescent plants from her homeworld cast a soft glow across the space, and crystals hung from the ceiling, refracting light in gentle patterns. "It helps me sleep," she explained, noticing his fascination. "Calistians require certain light frequencies for proper rest cycles." "It's beautiful," he said, then gestured to a small altar in the corner with a holographic image floating above it. "Is that—" "Soren," she confirmed. "A remembrance shrine in my tradition." Elliot approached it carefully. "Do you want me to move to the other guest room?" Lyria shook her head. "No. Memories shouldn't prevent new experiences." She deactivated the shrine with a gentle gesture. He would understand. They prepared a meal together, Lyria explaining which foods were compatible with human physiology as they worked. The domesticity felt both strange and natural, as if they'd been doing this for years rather than hours. "I'm curious," Elliot said as they ate. "How do Calestins express affection?" "Physically, I mean." Lyria set down her utensils, considering. "We're touch empaths. Skin contact is intimate for us, conveying emotions directly." She extended her hand across the table, palm up. "May I show you?" When Elliot placed his hand in hers, a warm sensation spread up his arm, carrying with it a gentle wave of affection and curiosity. He gasped softly. "That's just the surface," Lyria said, her indigo eyes watching him. "Without tears as a conduit, the connection is much milder. And with tears? That would be—" She searched for the word. "Profound." After dinner, they sat together on her cushioned meditation platform, sharing stories. Elliot spoke of Earth's oceans, describing to Lyria the sensation of floating in salt water under an open sky. She told him of Aurelia Prime's crystal forests, where light-sensitive trees created symphonies of color during seasonal changes. As the night deepened, their conversation gave way to tentative touches, his fingers tracing the luminous patterns on her arm, her hand resting against his chest to feel his heartbeat. Each contact built upon the lingering empathic bridge between them, strengthening it. Humans kiss, Elliot explained when she asked about Earth customs. It's how we often express desire. Lyria tilted her head curiously. Show me? Their first kiss was gentle, exploratory. Her lips were cooler than a human's, with a slight tingling sensation that intensified the contact. When they parted, Elliot saw that her indigo eyes had brightened, and the patterns across her purple skin pulsed in a quickened rhythm. That was... she whispered. Yes, he agreed, understanding her speechlessness perfectly. As the night progressed, they discovered other differences and similarities between their species. Lyria's touch left trails of soft light across his skin, while his warmth caused her luminous patterns to intensify. When emotion overwhelmed her and tears formed in her eyes, Elliot felt the now familiar electric sensation as they touched his skin, opening brief windows into her feelings. Their intimacy evolved with careful attention to each other's responses, finding harmony in their physiological differences rather than obstacles. What Elliot lacked in empathic ability, he made up for in tenderness and attentiveness. What Lyria couldn't express in human terms, she conveyed through the gentle glow that seemed to emanate from within her when they touched. By morning, they lay entwined in the soft light of dawn, having created something neither had experienced before, a connection that bridged not just their bodies, but their different ways of being in the universe. I never expected this, Lyria murmured against his shoulder. When I was assigned to this colony, I thought I would only heal bodies, not find someone who could heal 2 centuries of solitude. Elliot drew her closer, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him, despite being from a world light years away. Sometimes the universe has better plans than we do. Her luminous patterns pulsed in agreement as they drifted into contented sleep. New constellation. Absolutely not. Colony Director Mercer slammed his hand on the desk. Specialist Tanner, you're needed back at the terraforming site immediately. The project is already 6 weeks behind schedule because of the accident. Elliot maintained his composure, though inside he was seething. The site isn't stable yet. My entire team died there. Which is precisely why we need our most experienced specialist back in the field, Mercer countered. A replacement team arrives from Earth next week. Across the room, Lyria stood silently, her official translator badge indicating her role in this meeting was merely to facilitate communication. Not that any was needed between human colonists. But Elliot knew the real reason she was here. The colony leadership had discovered their relationship. And as for you, Healer Lyria, Mercer continued, turning to her, the Caliston Embassy has been informed of your unprecedented involvement with a human patient. They're recalling you to Aurelia Prime for review. Lyria's luminous patterns dimmed noticeably, but her voice remained steady. When must I depart? The diplomatic shuttle leaves in 3 days. The walk back to their quarters was silent, heavy with the weight of impending separation. Once inside, Elliot's careful control finally broke. This is deliberate, he said, pacing. They're splitting us up because they don't understand what happened between us. What's still happening? Lyria moved to the window, looking out at the terraformed section of Theros, where earth plants grew alongside native species. Perhaps they're right to be cautious. No documented bond like ours exists. That doesn't make it wrong, Elliot insisted, coming to stand behind her. Just unprecedented. She turned to face him, her indigo eyes searching his. Would you leave with me? Come to Aurelia Prime? The question hung in the air between them. Elliot had never considered leaving human space, becoming the alien in someone else's world. What would I do there? He asked softly. What you do here? Help reshape worlds to support life. Her purple fingers intertwined with his. My people are beginning new colonies and systems even your long-range probes haven't reached. They need terraforming expertise. Would they accept a human working alongside them? Calistines value skill and knowledge, Lyria said. And I would be there to help you adjust, as you would have helped me on Earth. Elliot considered this reversal of roles, him becoming the stranger in a strange land. It was terrifying and exhilarating at once. And us, what happens to us there? Lyria's expression grew serious. There would be scrutiny, questions, tests. My people will want to understand our connection. But there would also be possibilities that don't exist here, in this human colony with its human concerns. That night, as they lay together beneath the hanging crystals in their room, Elliot made his decision. While Lyria slept, he sent his resignation to Director Mercer, effective immediately. 3 days later, they stood together in the colony's launch bay, ignoring the stares of humans and the few alien representatives stationed on Theros. Elliot carried only one bag, terraforming manuals, soil samples, and a few personal items from Earth. Everything else he needed was standing beside him, her purple skin shimmering with anticipation. "Last call for boarding," announced the shuttle's automated system. "Destination, Aurelia Prime, with connections to the Calistine Federation worlds." "Are you certain?" Lyria asked, her indigo eyes serious. "Crossing between worlds is never simple." In answer, Elliot placed his hand against her cheek. "I've already crossed the most important distance. The rest is just space." As they boarded the shuttle, Elliot felt none of the regret he'd expected. Earth had been his past, Theros merely a transition. Whatever lay ahead, the scrutiny of Lyria's people, the challenges of being the only human in a Calistine world, the continuing mystery of their empathic bond, they would face together. The shuttle lifted off, breaking free of Theros' gravity. Through the viewport, Elliot watched the colony shrink until it was just another cluster of lights on the planet's surface, one constellation among many in an endless sky. Beside him, Lyria's fingers interlaced with his, her tears of joy leaving glowing trails down her purple cheeks. Each droplet that touched his skin conveyed not just emotion, but promise, of worlds yet unseen, challenges unconquered, and a connection that had rewritten what both believed possible. "In my culture," she whispered, "we have a saying, stars don't touch, yet together they form patterns that guide travelers home." Elliot smiled, understanding completely. "Then let's make a new constellation." As the shuttle accelerated toward the stars, two beings from different worlds held fast to each other, pioneers of a connection that transcended biology and distance, creating a map others might someday follow.